Hi everyone, I am going to do a screencast today in order to explain our first assignment, which is the prospectus. So you're going to see a little picture of me in the corner, and you're also going to see a PowerPoint presentation and some other things that I'm doing on my computer, so I can explain what's going on with this assignment. Please watch this video all the way through so you can get information about the assignment, and then of course you can always let me know if you have any questions. So it's nice to see you, or it's nice for you to see me, I guess, and let's get going. Our first assignment this quarter is the prospectus, and don't get overwhelmed by this. What you have to do for the prospectus is just take it section by section, and if you do that, each section should be fairly straightforward, and when you put it all together, you'll have a paper called the prospectus. So I'm going to introduce you to this assignment, and I will explain what it is, give some examples, and provide some guiding questions which will help you to write it, and I'll explain the process for completing it, and I'll provide the criteria that we're going to use to grade it. So first of all, what is it? Well, the prospectus is basically a paper that is going to provide an overview and introduce the scope and context of TESOL education in the city or country or society of your future teaching. You're going to use some published citations and look up a little bit more information about the context. So you're going to talk about what is the social context of learning, how is English used in the society and in your learners' lives, and what is the role of English in that society. First, you're going to decide on your EFL teaching context. You may not be absolutely certain of where you want to teach in the future, but I would like you to then choose some place to focus on if you're not absolutely sure. Decide what level you're most likely to teach, or what level you're most interested in learning about for the purposes of this course, because all of your assignments are going to relate to that same context and same teaching level. And then you're going to begin researching your context. So you're going to look for books, articles, websites, and other information about the context. If you're not familiar with the context, you may want to interview someone who has experience teaching or learning in that context. Or you could go on like Dave's ESL Cafe and enter a chat room about teaching in that context. Or you could find the professional organization that deals with that context and see what kind of information they provide. So there's various ways to look into the teaching context you're interested in. What is the content of the prospectus? The prospectus will be organized in the way indicated on the rubric. So here are the relevant sections. The first section will be the context of English, describing the context of English. So the subsections of that are the role of English in your target teaching context. Another subsection is the history of English teaching and methodologies. And another subsection is the social context of English learning. Then part 2 is more about you and the target teaching level that you want to teach. So you can see you would have a subsection describing your target teaching level, a subsection describing the current state of teaching at the target level, and a subsection describing previous career experience and your career goals. Now I'm going to go through each one of those individually. Okay, first let me take you to the rubric for this assignment. Now, if you go onto our Blackboard site, right here, and you click on assignments, right here, this is where you're going to get more information about all of our assignments. So, right here, this is called the prospectus. So I first clicked on assignments, and then I clicked on the folder for prospectus, and the other assignments will have folders in there as well. So here, under prospectus, you can find the rubric, you can find the formatting guidelines, and a sample of the prospectus. Let me open up the rubric so we can take a look at it together. Here's the rubric, and this is what I'll use to grade your paper. So for each section, I'm going to look to make sure that you have the section and that the section included the content that was expected. So here's the rubric. The first part is worth 25 points. The second part is worth 25 points. And then you get points for your use of academic language. This is just in general the style. We want the style to be academic. We want you to use proper citation format and also the format that we indicated for you to use for the prospectus. You'll have personal content in that second section where you talk about your goals for your career and you talk about what you have experienced in the past that's relevant. We have 5 points for grammar and language use, and we subtract points if it's not spell checked or if it needs more proofreading. Okay, so the total is 100 points for the assignment. And just so you know, this assignment is formatively assessed, so that when you turn in your first draft, I will give you a rubric with comments and feedback, and you can redo it and turn it in to get a better score. So you'll get feedback and then you'll be able to revise it. Okay, coming back to our PowerPoint about the prospectus. Let's turn to that first part, those first 3 subsections of the prospectus. The first section or subsection is the role of English. So your section on the role of English will consider many of the questions that we addressed in our lecture on the context of EFL. So you might want to go back to that lecture. What role does English play in the society in question? How is English perceived? How is it actually used? What symbolic value does it carry? And what are the policies related to English? Is it an official language? Is there mandatory English instruction from elementary school? Is English a medium of instruction, for example, for science and math, as it is in some countries? Other policies related to English and English education. From here, I want to turn to our sample. And as you can see on Blackboard, there's also a prospectus sample. So you can open this up, and here's what you will see. So this is a sample prospectus from 2009, and it's about Korea. So here, as you can see, the role of English in Korea is talked about in terms of how and why people use English, how English has come into Korea historically, and various aspects of the role of English. So here's the growing importance of English language, skills for higher paying jobs, etc. So there you can see that is the section on the role of English, and you can see here that I want to highlight this. There are references. Okay, so sorry. There are references right here. For example, Kim 2008 is being cited in terms of the information that this student is bringing in. Okay, so there you have it. That was the first section. Now we have a section on the history of English teaching and methodologies. So, the history of English teaching is about English teaching methodologies in the society in question. How was English traditionally taught in your target teaching context? What approaches or methods have been used over time? How have English teaching approaches and methods in your target teaching context changed over time? And describe how these methods evolved and their effect on teaching and learning. So for example, in the US, when we think about foreign language instruction, there used to be, like traditionally, there was just a focus on reading and translating the readings. And then we moved to grammar translation, where people translated texts, and it was really a way of teaching Latin. Um, but then we decided, oh, we need to communicate as well. That's when we went through the First World War and Second World War. We realized we need to be able to communicate better with actual people who are speaking the language. So we changed our methods to audiolingual methods and then communicative language teaching. So it has changed over time. So in this section, you're going to talk about how it has changed over time in the context in question. So let's look at, you can look at the sample and see this student, how they talked about the history of language teaching in Korea and English education. It started as grammar translation method and talks a little bit about how the curriculum has changed over time, etc. So you can look at what that student did with that section and get a sense of what you need to include about your target teaching context. And the social context of English learning will give a sense of how English is learned. So this is another section, again, another subsection of the text, how English is learned and taught in your target teaching context. Later on, you'll talk more about the specific level, but this is just more general about language teaching in that society. Why do people learn English? For example, in Korea, I know that the TOEFL is very important in getting jobs, for example. In many societies, you have to pass an entrance exam to get into the university, and various other reasons. Or do people want to actually take the TOEFL and study in the United States? Is that the goal? So what's happening with English learning in your context? Is English mandatory? From what grade? How well do people learn English? Is there equal access across social contexts? Like, do people learn English? Do they have more access to English in the cities than they do out in the countryside? And various things like that. So again, look at the sample to see how that student dealt with that section. Okay, turning to part 2, the 3 bullet points that are in the next part of the rubric. This section provides more information about your target teaching level in particular, such as elementary, adult, university, etc., and about you and your goals for teaching. So the target teaching level is about what level you'd like to teach, and we talked about target teaching levels in the lecture on TESOL as a profession. So give some indication to why you want to teach at this level. The current state of teaching at the target level, you need to describe what's going on currently with teaching at that level. Is it mandatory? What kind of curriculum do they have? Do they have a specific set of standards? Where can we find these standards? What kinds of resources and materials are used? How much time do people spend learning English at that level, etc.? And there you could talk also about some challenges that you noticed at that level. And the final section is about your previous career experience. So talk about yourself, your career so far, and explain your goals for teaching at that level. What do you want to accomplish? What are some needs for improvement that you'd like to address teaching in that context? You can see some resources for TESOL, some content areas, and some interest sections that you might look at to see what kinds of goals you might talk about. Now, just quickly, the process for this that we're going to go through is you're going to brainstorm about this now, start gathering information about your context, include references and citations in your prospectus, create an outline with bullet points of what you will include in your prospectus, and that is what we will peer review in Module 2. And finally, the first draft of the prospectus is due at the end of Module 3. Do your best on this. You will have a chance to revise it based on my feedback for a better score later, but try to turn in a full draft by the end of Module 3. Okay, I'll put this PowerPoint up on Blackboard and let me know if you have any questions.